The Dark type, one of my personal favorite types in the franchise, with some of my overall favorites being Greninja, Roaring Moon, and Tyranitar. However, can they beat Pokémon Emerald as a hardcore Nuzlocke? This means that any Pokémon that faints is dead forever, and I can only catch one new Pokémon per area. Combine that with the fact that I only have 7 encounters, and I can only use 3 of them for the first half of the playthrough, and it looks like this is going to be tough. My journey starts with obtaining my starter, Cujo the Poochyena. I mean, who needs Mudkip, Torchic, or Trico? Can any of these guys play fetch? Yeah, I don't think so. And then find the 1% encounter rate Seedot, who I can catch with relative ease and evolve into the Dark type Nuzleaf. Fun fact, the name Nuzlocke derives from Nuzleaf because the creator, Nick Franco, named his Nuzleaf Locke, hence the name Nuzlocke. The more you know. With the history lesson over, I can challenge the first gym leader Roxanne and her rock types. She leads off with Geodude, and I with Gauge for the type matchup. I go for growth on turn 1 to raise my special attack before eating a soft rock throw. With a boost, a Bullet Seed on the following turn cleanly crushes the sentient rock. The same fate also applies to Roxanne's second Geodude, leaving Roxanne with her final Pokemon, Nosepass, who is incredibly bulky, so a Bullet Seed even with 3 hits and the boost only does about half. And this means the nose heals up with a held Oranberry. This also means my follow-up Bullet Seed fails to get the KO, leaving Nosepass in the red. However, all it does is go for a completely useless Harden. This does cause Roxanne to use a potion on the next turn, but this allows me to set up a second growth, raising my special attack further. And then on the following turn, Gauge lands a critical hit Bullet Seed to take the bulky nose out. This wins me the battle and my first gym badge with relative ease. After taking a boat to a mysterious island with an old man, wait, is this a video game or real life commentary? Anyway, I can then pick up the third and last encounter for a while, being Sableye. Normally Sableye isn't the best Pokemon due to a low base stat total. However, his ghost typing is invaluable because it gives me an immunity to the fighting type, one of the dark type's many weaknesses. The ghost type also allows immunity to normal moves, which is an added bonus as well. Before the second gym badge, I can get one last boost to my team in the form of my starter Cujo evolving into the Hellhound Mightyena. For today's question, tell me your favorite Hoenn Pokemon down in the comment section and subscribe to the channel. With that, I can take on the second gym leader Brawly and his fighting types. And normally a bunch of dark types against a bunch of fighting types, not the best scenario. However, none of Brawly's Pokemon actually have a way to hit Jigsaw, so even as Machop bulks up, I'm never in any danger. I can take out all 3 of Brawly's Pokemon with a few Nightshades apiece, winning me probably the easiest gym badge ever. With that, I can take a boat to another island. Okay, what is the Pokemon Company trying to tell us? Nevertheless, the show must go on, and before I can progress further, I have to face my rival May in one of the hardest rival fights in series history. Her team is incredibly diverse, with a grass, water, fire core. Fortunately, I do have a play here. May leads off with her Wingull, and I bring in Jigsaw. However, I immediately switch to Cujo for an Intimidate attack drop as Wingull then whiffs a Supersonic. Tackle on the next turn then does a ton of damage, more than half, as Water Gun only does a little bit of damage. With that, a Bite on the next turn then takes care of the Seagull, causing May to send in her scariest Pokemon, Combusken, with super effective fighting Double Kick. I switch to Jigsaw on the next turn as this thing goes for a Focus Energy, which is pretty scary. Unlike Brawly, Jigsaw is in danger here as the chicken threatens with Embers, which now have a higher chance to crit. To help my odds, I make sure to fake out for a little bit of chip and then take an Ember on the following turn. Luckily, it doesn't get the critical hit. From here, we start exchanging Nightshades and Embers in an attempt to outdamage each other. Eventually, I do manage to outdamage Combusken, although by the skin of my teeth, as Jigsaw only has 9 HP, and May still has her final Pokemon, Lombre. So once again, it's back to Cujo for an Intimidate, reducing Swift's power, thankfully. A few turns later, and Cujo manages to emerge victorious, and I win the battle. But now it's time for one of the hardest fights in this challenge, against Watson and his electric types. Watson is notorious for being incredibly difficult, and any team without Marshtomp will always struggle against him. He basically has 2 powerful aces in Magneton and Manectric. This battle took a long time to theorycraft for, but I did find a workaround. As Watson leads off with Voltorb, I bring out Gauge to first fake out for a little bit of chip and a flinch. From here, I switch to Jigsaw on a Spark, doing about a fourth, but it does manage to paralyze, which means the Cherry Berry I was hoping to use later is used prematurely. Anyway, I can then fake out, which crits and does massive damage on the next turn. This does get Watson to waste a potion on the following turn, as Nightshade does what appears to be about half. So this means that all Jigsaw has to do is take a second Shockwave on the next turn and finish Watson's first Pokemon with a oh no. So it turns out Voltorb had a little bit more than 40 HP, contrary to what I thought. This means that Jigsaw has to take one more Shockwave, therefore doing more damage than what I was expecting. And although we can finally pick up the KO, we are kind of in a worse position. Second is Electrike, and seeing how low we are in HP, I bring in Cujo for the Intimidate, which is offset by a Howl. Seeing this, I have Cujo also set by Howl to raise his attack, as the little dog mirror moves us. I try to exploit the AI, because when you set up a stat, the opponent will try to compensate by setting up either the same or a different stat. Pokemon AI is really confusing, and I don't even think the people who develop these games know the exact mechanics. For our intents and purposes, it works well enough, and we can get to +4 attack as Electrike hits a Shockwave, which isn't even boosted. A Bite on the next turn then does massive damage, but it does fail to get the KO. This means Electrike gets off a second Shockwave for a little bit of damage. But with that, Cujo can go for a second Bite into Electrode, leaving Watson with only 2 Pokemon left, one of them being Magneton. Prior to the fight, I taught Cujo Rock Smash for super effective damage, giving me the best chance of dealing with this thing. On turn 1, I go for a Rock Smash, which crits before the box of Volts goes for a Thunder Wave, which is negated by a held Cherry Berry. Watson then almost heals back on the following turn, and my follow-up Rock Smash, even with the boosts, doesn't even do half. This means that Rock Smash Numero Trace fails to pick up the KO, and the Magnet lives with what must be 1 HP. This allows Magneton to paralyze me, and he also gets off a Sonic Boom on the following turn. But even through all of that, Cujo proves why he's the best boy by finishing Magneton off with a final Rock Smash, although Watson still has one more Pokemon. As Manectric takes the field, I switch to my only healthy Pokemon, Gage, on a resisted Shockwave that still does decent damage. On the next turn, I go for a Fake Out just to get a little bit of chip before Manectric goes for a Howl on the next turn. In retaliation, I go for a Torment so that the Cone Dog can't use the same move twice in a row. This will be important for later. Manectric does go for a Thunder Wave, paralyzing Gage on the next turn. However, I can go for a Rock Smash, and I get the defense drop, so that's huge. But unfortunately for us, Manectric gets off a free Howl, and on the following turn, I get fully paralyzed. However, I stay in and take a massive Quick Attack down to the yellow, but I once again stay fully paralyzed. My held Oranberry does activate, meaning I can take one more attack, assuming it doesn't crit. Fortunately, all Manectric does is go for a Howl, and I could go for a Thief to do some damage, but more importantly, I could seal the dog's Citrus Berry, giving me a ton of HP. With that, however, I can switch to Jigsaw on a Quick Attack, which is negated. I can then go for a Fake Out on the following turn for a little bit of chip damage, and then switch to Gage on what should be a Shockwave. This is why I use Torment, because I know if I switch into Sableye, it will always be on a normal move. And whenever I switch to Nuzleaf, I know Manectric can either set up his attack or go for resisted Shockwave. I can keep spamming this process by switching to Jigsaw, going for Fake Out to get the flinch, and then switching back to Gage to absorb the Shockwave until Manectric finally goes down and I win a very hard 3rd gym badge. Man, what has it been with me and 3rd gym badges lately? First Kabu, now Watson, what's been going on? From here, I take a cable car up to Mount Chimney where I can fight one of the evil team gym leaders, Maxie. Maxie leads off with a Mighty Anna of his own, and I bring out Cujo for the double Intimidate. I do my best to set up as many Howls as possible as Mighty Anna just spams sand attacks. Unfortunately, Maxie's Mighty Anna hits a Roar, sending Cujo out and replacing him with Jigsaw. So from here, I just start dealing as much damage as possible with Nightshade. However, Mighty Anna is unfortunately able to outdamage me with Bite. And he gets a flinch, so I have to swap it to Cujo again for the Intimidate and set up my attack once more. Mighty Anna can't really do much, so a Rock Smash on the following turn takes the KO. This causes Maxie to send in Golbat, who survives a Bite in the yellow before a Wing Attack does a little bit of damage. Sadly, Bite low rolls, meaning I have to stomach another Wing Attack. Maxie heals back to full on the following turn, so I take the opportunity to set up another Howl. From here, Zubat is easy pickings with 2 more bites, leaving Maxie with his final Pokemon being his 8th Camerupt. Thankfully, we could just outspeed and nail the Camo with a Dig on the following turn, winning me the battle. With that, it's back to the gym challenge, and it's time to take on Flannery and her fire types. However, this battle is way easier than Watson thanks to Cujo being able to learn the TM for Dig. Exploiting Flannery's Slugma being, well, not even remotely good, I can set up 6 Howls and get to +6 attack. From here, I can start ripping through Flannery's team like perfectly cooked fish fillet. Wait, wrong channel. I do have to take some magnitude damage in the process as our ace Torkoal comes in and it looks like I'm in a really bad position. However, you may have noticed that Cujo leveled up to 30 during this battle, which is allowed so long as the Pokemon is at the cap at the start of the battle. Anyway, the extra level guarantees the KO on the incredibly bulky turtle, and just like that, I've collected half of the gym badges in Hoenn. I need to enter the desert where I can find my fourth encounter, a Cacnea named Venus. Sadly, Venus is just a mere grass type and can't be used until the next level cap. So as it's time to face dear old dad and his normal types, it's just the same old trio that we've gotten used to going into the fight. Norman leads off with Spinda, and I bring out Gage. Spinda does no teeter dance, so I can't just take the KO with Jigsaw because he will likely be damaged from confusion. Instead, I go for a fake out to get some chip and then outspeed with a rock smash for decent damage and a defense drop. Unfortunately, Spinda then confuses me with a teeter dance. Because of this, I swap to Jigsaw as Spinda outsmarts me and then goes for another teeter dance, even though I'm already confused. I decide to risk the biscuit, but I end up hurting myself in confusion. And since I need Jigsaw for later, I swap it to Gage on yet again another teeter dance. How? Again? Anyway, this means it's back to Jigsaw as this stupid piece of goes for a fourth teeter dance. Process that keeps repeating itself for several turns as Spinda keeps spamming teeter dance. The only damage I'm able to get off is a fake out from Jigsaw to bring the trash panda in the yellow. After switching some more, I get off another one which is just shy of the KO, and this means Norman heals up. But then I get the idea to do something useful, and I go for a toxic, meaning I'm always able to get passive damage. This means that all I have to do is switch around until the poison has accrued enough. But this fight is just getting started, as that was the appetizer and Norman's ace Slaking comes in. And if you know anything about Slaking, then you know as the BST of a legendary. On turn 1, I decide to switch into Gage as Slaking Loafs, but on the first turn. Odd, I have no clue as to why this is, it must be a programming error or something. But hey, a free turn, I'm not complaining. This is also good for me because I can then go for a fake out for some chip damage to waste a turn. From here, I decided to switch into Jigsaw on the loafing turn and once again go for fake out. Can you see where I'm going with this? On the loafing turn, I make sure to go for toxic to get passive damage. Slaking can actually hit me with dark type feint attack, so I can't just stay in with Jigsaw, and even though it's resisted, Slaking's offenses are much better than my defenses. I can then start phase 2 of dealing with Slaking by going for a detect on the attacking turn and attacking with rock smash on the loafing turn. The process repeats itself for several turns as Slaking is left with barely enough HP. This means that Norman will heal, and with me being out of detect PP, I have to switch into Gage. But Norman doesn't heal, and Slaking just goes for a yawn, meaning he falls to the poison at the end of the turn. With Norman having half of his team left, he sends in Vigoroth, and I go for a fake out on the following turn for a little bit of chip damage, and then at the end of the turn, Gage falls asleep. I try to stay in, but I'm outsmarted as the Sloth goes for an encore, which locks me into fake out, a move that can only be used on the first turn. Facade is also doing a ton of damage, and while I don't need Gage, I want to keep him alive. So I decide to send in Cujo for the Intimidate and to clean things up. From here we start exchanging bites, facades, and slashes. Bites are doing decent damage, and I even get Norman to use a potion, although that doesn't really matter. A few turns later, and the Sloth luckily falls to a bite, leaving Norman with his final Pokemon, Linoone. And normally this thing is really scary with Belly Drum. However, I can switch into Jigsaw, who can't be hit at all from Linoone since he only has normal moves. Even though he goes for a Belly Drum, it means literally nothing, and a few turns later I best dear old dad and prove why I'm superior. What a loser. With the level cap increase, I can make a bunch of upgrades for the team. The first is bringing Venus out of the box and evolving him into Cacturne, a much better grass and dark type than Gage. The second is fishing by Malvile City and Route 102 and picking up a Carvana named Jaws and Pinch the Corphish. These are both great water types who I can evolve right away into their final forms, being Sharpedo and Corphish. I can also evolve Gage into Shiftry as well by using a Leaf Stone, so now my team is looking pretty solid. In fact, using Jaws, I can sweep May's entire team with extreme ease, and outside of Fortress City, I began hunting for an Absol. I didn't find one, so I put the game away and went to bed. But when I woke up and booted my save file, I realized I was in Malvile City and only had 3 gym badges. This means I lost about half my progress and about half of my team. I can actually get back to where I was very easily just by overleveling my Pokemon and blasting through the game. Which is allowed, by the way, because I've already done these battles legitimately. A short while later, and I have a new team with different natures, IVs, and EVs. Something interesting to note is that somewhere along the way, my Pokemon contracted Pokerus, which is a super rare disease that doubles effort values gained by a Pokemon. To put into perspective how rare Pokerus is, in modern games, you will encounter up to 3 shinies before contracting the disease. I've actually never found a wild shiny Pokemon for this channel, but I've found Pokerus twice. With the tangent over, I can face the 6th gym leader when known to enter flying types. She leads off with Swablu, and I get Jaws, or technically Jaws 2, for her debut battle. An Ice Beam on turn 1 oddly fails to KO, but all Swablu does is go for a Safeguard. Swablu surviving isn't actually awful, because Winona does waste a potion on her worst Pokemon. From there we can take the Cloudbird out with an Ice Beam and Crunch combination. Second is Tropius, one of the most underrated Pokemon of all time. Still, that doesn't stop it from being taken out by a quad super effective Ice Beam. Third out is Toilet Bird, who Jaws can't attack for super effective damage. Instead, I go for a Crunch, which does do decent damage, almost half, before Pelipper connects with a Supersonic, confusing me. Not wanting to deal with confusion shenanigans, I switch into Crab for his debut battle on a failed Protect. An Ice Beam on the next turn is just shy of the KO, as Pelipper connects with a second Supersonic in a row. Yikes. Again, not wanting to deal with confusion, I pivot into Jaws on a failed Protect. Instead of healing back to full, Winona then just goes for another Protect, which delays the inevitable because I can take the bird out with a Crunch. Fourth is Skarmory, so I stay in and I go for a Surf, which does more than half, as an Aerial Ace does about a third into Jaws. Fortunately, I can then pick up the KO on the following turn with a final Surf, leaving Winona with her ace, Altaria. Altaria is actually super scary since it knows both Dragon Dance and Earthquake, meaning it can sweep my entire team if I'm not careful. We can outspeed and an Ice Beam for massive damage, but just like with Swablu, it is just shy of the KO, and Altaria goes for a scary Dragon Dance. Luckily for us, a held Oran Berry does heal Altaria out of healing range, but I do know I'm in a very scary position since I have to risk a critical hit Earthquake. I stay in, and we survive with just 4 HP and can take Altaria out from there with a follow-up Ice Beam, winning me the battle and the 6th gym badge by the skin of my teeth. With that, I can catch my 7th and final encounter, being an Absol named Horse. Absol is a great Pokemon and one that I've actually never used before. Nevertheless, he is a welcome addition to the team despite a lack of a secondary typing. This also marks the retirement of Gage, who was extremely helpful but has now gotten outclassed by better Pokemon. Enjoy your retirement, buddy. After a quick tussle with Maxie that goes off with no problem, it's back to the gym challenge against Psychic-type trainers Tate and Liza. But given that we have the type advantage, this battle isn't too bad. The twins lead off with Xatu and Claydol, and I bring out Horse as well as Jaws. Xatu predictably sets up a Calm Mind, which is scary, but I can hit a Crunch doing massive damage, and have Horse set up a Swords Dance to raise my attack. However, Earthquake from Claydol does a ton of damage into both of my Pokemon. Luckily, the twins then throw as Xatu sets up another Calm Mind before it's taken out by my super effective Crunch, and Claydol falls to a boosted Shadow Ball from Absol. Great. Their final 2 Pokemon, 2 sentient alien rocks. But they're easy pickings as Jaws can unleash a Surf into both Lunatone and Solrock, doing about half of their HP. A Shadow Ball from Horse then takes out Lunatone, leaving only Solrock. Solrock tries to charge a Solar Beam, but won't ever get to use it because a follow-up Surf from Jaws then takes them out, winning me the battle and the 7th gym badge. After this, I can go to Steven's house. Guys, if this is the former champion and son of a guy who has a monopoly on cell phone technology or whatever, and this is the house he lives in, we are cooked. He doesn't even have a bed or another room. Everyone watching this video, good luck affording a home. In Seafoam Cavern, I have my first and final confrontation with Archie. There isn't anything in this battle that's insanely noteworthy, as Jaws takes down Mightyena, Crab can dispatch of Crobat after some healing shenanigans, and lastly Venus can take care of his Sharpedo. Hey, has anybody ever wondered why Archie barely uses any water types? He wants to turn the world into water, but he doesn't use any. Practice what you preach, buddy. After this, we can watch Archie use the red orb to wake up the blue Pokemon. I still, to this day, don't know why the developers would do this. Anyway, using the green pool noodle, we can save the world and I can get back to what matters most. Gym badges. And this time it's against the final gym leader, Juan, and his water types. He leads off with Love Disc, and I with Horse. Love Disc goes for a Sweet Kiss on turn 1, but a held Person Berry heals the confusion before I can set up a Swords Dance. After Love Disc somehow outspeeds on the following turn, going for Water Pulse, I can get to +4 with Swords Dance, giving me a ton of momentum. This means that all I have to do is pray that Water Pulse doesn't confuse, which it doesn't, meaning we can rip a Shadow Ball for the instant one-shot. Nice. Juan's Wishcash and Celio both meet the same fate and are dispatched by a Shadow Ball apiece. For Crawdon, I go for a Slash, which takes the KO, and this leaves Juan with his final Pokemon, Kingdra. And anybody who's played Pokemon Emerald knows how brutal this thing is to deal with Rest, Double Team, and Water Pulse. It's super bulky, meaning if you get off an attack, it probably won't do that much damage, and on top of that, it has Rest and Potions to heal up. As luck would have it, I have a fix, because as Kingdra sets up a Double Team, I can go for a Parasong. This means that no matter what, Kingdra will always fall in 3 turns. The challenge just becomes surviving those 3 turns. However, I do have the perfect answer in Crab, who walls Kingdra with its resistances to all of its moves and manages to hit 2 Brick Breaks through Double Team before the Seahorse falls, and I've just won the 8th and final gym badge. With that, I'm at the steps of the Pokemon League, where 5 final trainers await me. My final squad consists of Horse with Shadow Ball, Slash, Parasong, and Swords Dance, Venus with Needle Arm, Growth, Leech Seed, and Feint Attack, Jaws the Sharpedo with Earthquake, Ice Beam, Surf, and Crunch, Kudra the Mighty Anna with Rock Smash, Howl, Thief, and Crunch, Crab with Swords Dance, Brick Break, Ice Beam, and Surf, and lastly Jigsaw the Sableye with Fake Out, Aerial Ace, Feint Attack, and Shadow Ball. Let's do this. First in the Elite Four is fellow Dark-type trainer Sydney. He leads off with a Mighty Anna of his own who does intimidate me as I lead off with Crab. Still, that doesn't stop me from setting up a Swords Dance on the first turn, as Mighty Anna then just goes for a Sand Attack to lower my accuracy. Not wanting to deal with missed shenanigans, I decide to switch it to Jaws on a massive double edge doing about half of my total HP. Luckily, a Surf on the following turn then drowns the dog, causing Sydney to send in Cacturn. I decide to pivot into Horse on a Needle Arm for a little bit of damage. I can then outspeed and go for a Swords Dance as the Cactus misses Cotton Spore, rendering it completely useless. With that, the Sentient Cactus then falls to a single neutral Slash. Fourth is Crawdon, who does manage to live a Slash in the red, but all he does is set up a Swords Dance. So after Sydney heals, twice, a Slash then picks up the KO from there. Last from Sydney is Absol, and Horse takes out his counterpart, winning me the battle. 1 down, 4 to go. Second in the Elite Four is Phoebe, who is by far the easiest member. Since her lead Dusclops always goes for Protect, I send in Horse, who goes for a Swords Dance. And then he proceeds to rip through her entire team with super effective Shadow Balls, winning me a pretty easy battle. Third is Glacia and her Ice types, who are incredibly bulky, so planning did take a while. She leads off with Celio, and since I know she's going to set the hail up, I go for a Swords Dance to boost my attack. This means on the following turn, Brick Break takes the seal out as Glacia sends in her Glalie, which also means the same fate and is taken out by a Brick Break. But third out is Walrein, who is super bulky, and suddenly we are in a very scary position. Luckily, I can heal up with a Held Citrus Berry before I make my move. Walrein does outspeed and hits somewhat hard with Ice Beam before Brick Break comes out. I'm just kidding, we always find a crit and we always had the one shot. Last out is Glalie, and luckily the hail does stop, because Glalie can actually outspeed and nail me with an Ice Beam before I can respond with the Brick Break KO, winning me the battle. Last in the Elite Four is Drake, the Dragon Master. Drake leads off with Shelgon, and I with Jaws. Shelgon goes for Protect on turn 1, but after that he falls to a single super effective Ice Beam. The same fate applies to Drake's Flygon, but as Kingdra comes in, it's a bit different as he doesn't take super effective damage. Still, a Crunch does do massive damage and almost picks up the KO from full, but Kingdra lives in the red, and he sets up a Dragon Dance, which is pretty scary. Drake does heal back to full on the next turn, but once again I can hit a Crunch and then somehow outspeed a +1 Kingdra and take the kill with another Crunch. Anyway, both Flygon, Numero Dos, and Salamence fall to a singular Ice Beam apiece, winning me the battle and a pretty tame and stakeless Elite Four. This means that all that's left is the champion Wallace and his water team. The Elite Four is normally the toughest part of any challenge, but here they are definitely a cakewalk. Wallace and his team is somewhat scary, and I don't foresee us getting out deathless, especially with powerful Pokemon at his disposal like Gyarados and Milotic. Either way, the challenge ends here. Let's do this. First from Wallace is his Wailord, and I bring out Horse. I need as much damage as possible to weaken the power of Water Spout, so I go for a Slash hoping for a crit, but no dice, and Water Spout in retaliation then does a ton of damage, leaving me in the yellow. Luckily for us, a Held Citrus Berry does negate some of the damage. I can then outspeed and hit another Slash on the next turn, but this time Wailord goes for a double edge, doing massive damage, And although we survive on a mere 8 health points and we can take the whale out with a slash, it's not looking good for Horse as Tentacruel comes in. This is one of Wallace's scary Pokemon, and I can't take any risks. With a heavy heart, I watch as Horse is taken out by a Sludge Bomb. Rest in peace, buddy. In Horse's place, I set in Jaws, who can rip an Earthquake doing massive damage, although it is just shy of the KO. But all Tentacruel does is miss a Toxic, so that's nice. Wallace does heal, but it doesn't matter because Jaws, being the legend that he is, pulls through and lands a critical hit to take Tentacruel out from full HP. What a freaking legend. Sadly, Wallace's next Pokemon is Ludicolo, who is probably as scariest with Double Team and Leech Seed, meaning you can never heal your team, and before you know it, you're on the receiving end of a wipe. Knowing this, I have Jaws stay in and fire off a Crunch for about a quarter as Giga Drain does him in. Oh wait, he survives on 2 HP. Sadly, all this does is delay the inevitable because after going for a Crunch, Giga Drain takes out Jaws and marks the second death. Thank you for your service. We wouldn't have gotten here without you. I do have a plan here, and it involves Venus of all Pokemon, who has barely gotten any screen time. He can come in and set up a growth, while all Ludicolo does is hit resisted surfs for a little bit of damage. I repeat the same process on the next turn and get to +2 before sponging another surf, which doesn't even take me in the yellow. So by the time I set up a third growth, Ludicolo, being the piece of shit that he is, sets up a double team. Venus then hits a massive +4 boosted feint attack on the following turn to take Ludicolo out before it became a huge threat. The ball is now in our court, and so is the momentum, as Wallace sends in his 4th Pokemon, Milotic, who falls to a single Needle Arm. 5th is Wishcash, whose quad super effective weakness to grass isn't saving it anytime soon. But last is Gyarados, who is part Flying type and will actually survive the Needle Arm. He will then respond with an attack, and whatever move he picks will KO Venus. Nah, I'm just kidding, even he gets taken out by a Needle Arm, and that wins me the battle and the run. That was a fun one. I don't use Dark types often, but when I do, they are some of the best ones in all of Pokemon. When I thought about doing this challenge, I thought it would be super hard with only 7 encounters and 2 pairs overlapping secondary typings, but I was surprised at how good each and every encounter was. I've never used most of these Pokemon before, so it was definitely a fun experience. Thank you so much for watching this video. Tell me what challenge I should tackle next. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Peace.